Indolent employees who tinker on their computers be dismissed. To put it mildly, James Smith, the company's 59-year-old new CEO, is incompetent. He needs assistance to make copies because he is so digitally illiterate. Naturally, I believe he's the worst, but so does everyone else. He branded me a lazy thief without even attempting to grasp the nature of my profession as an engineer. James arbitrarily changed the company's policies, which made working there intolerable. I gave up trying to follow him and did as he asked, resigning. He called me nonstop the day after I resigned. It appears that the management system I designed contained a mistake. I handed him a condition in exchange for his command to correct it. Jason Williams, the company's lone system engineer, is 42 years old and in charge of the management system. Being a tiny company, we are never fully staffed. Although we appreciate requests from clients, we are always working overtime due to a staffing shortage. I intended to speak with James about expanding our recruiting in the near future. But the sales department keeps piling work on me as if to obstruct me. Incorporate this choice. The deadline has accelerated, so move quickly. They press their demands without thinking about how much it will cost me. There were a lot of engineers at the company when I started. I was just getting started, copying my seniors, but before I realized it, everyone had left, leaving me alone. Having to do everything by yourself was more taxing than the loneliness of losing coworkers. We were told that the CEO would be replaced at this time. The outgoing CEO, James Smith, a 59-year-old vice president, was leaving his position due to age. "Hello, I'm James Smith, the new CEO," James said as he arrived at our meeting this morning. "Let's put forth a lot of effort to expand this business." Although I was taken off by his patronizing tone, I had hoped that a new CEO would bring in more engineers. I went over to talk to him about it right away. "James, I have something to discuss." "Who are you?" He gave me a wary glance. It was surprising that, despite our infrequent encounters, he had not recognized me after more than a decade of working for the company. "Jason Williams, the engineer, is who I am. Have you overlooked it?" "Technician. Is there such a department even here?" James glanced up, seemingly lost in contemplation, his expression bewildered. The fact that he was really unaware of the engineering department was alarming. "My task has been to create our management system. Do you truly not know who I am?" "I've always focused on sales, so I know nothing about computers." James forgot about me as the VP since he was so busy helping the CEO and traveling. Even though I felt ignored, I continued with my request. "I'm the sole engineer here right now. If this keeps up, efficiency will suffer and the workload will become excessive. Is it possible for us to hire extra employees?" I told James how desperate I was, but he scowled and shook his head. "My former CEO gave me the order to boost earnings. Adding more employees would only drive up labor expenses. But if we hire even one more engineer, we can handle more work." I was rejected, but I was determined not to give up and kept pleading. James, however, waved his hand dismissively, clearly unhappy. "Enough is enough. Since I recently took over, I'm too busy. We'll talk about this later." He clumped back to his office after that. To be fair, he had recently assumed the role of CEO, and he must have felt a great deal of responsibility having been given the firm by his predecessor. I made the decision to wait and come up to him once he had become comfortable. But it soon became apparent that James was incapable of operating a computer or a copier correctly. He summoned me to his office one day and said, "My computer is broken. Make it right." Nothing was touched by me. It simply broke by itself. Make it right. I never even got the chance to question because he insisted it wasn't his fault. There was nothing happening when you pressed keys on the black desktop screen. Observe, I detest computers because of this. They simply snap without prior notice. Okay, let me take a look. I looked for any peripheral problems. I identified the issue in less than a minute. Peering beneath James's feet, I noticed a cable disconnected from the outlet. The electricity must have been mistakenly turned off by kicking it. I showed it to him after picking it up. Look, it was just unplugged. When I plugged it back in, the computer functioned flawlessly, and the power came back promptly. When James realized it was his error, his eyes grew wide. If it's fixed, you can leave this place. Return to your work now. I was kicked out of his office, and as I looked down the corridor at a garbage can, I instantly remembered his face and instinctively kicked it. James was obviously quite technologically illiterate and had no familiarity with computers. How, therefore, did he work and advance in his career? He used to be a salesperson. Since he used outside sales to meet his quotas in his earlier years, he frequently claimed that office labor involving computers belonged on his subordinates' shoulders. James called me over one other day, and it turned out he needed some documents copied. For me, making copies is something you can do quickly on your own. Cease talking. I don't get along with the newest copiers. Simply carry it out. With some reluctance, I took the documents he handed me and stood in front of the copier. I sighed deeply to be called for such insignificant activities, especially during working hours. Mr. VP, why don't you ask someone else? You called me, but why? As I was putting the documents into the copier, I questioned James. He had a red pen tucked behind his ear and was reading a newspaper about racing. Since you appear to be the least busy, nobody spends their entire day typing on a computer except for you. What? I could not disguise my bewilderment at his reply. Developing the company's security software and management system is my responsibility. I was consistently able to make deadlines even with the sales department's outrageous demands. We've stayed clear of client complaints and kept the company's good name because of my efforts. However, it was startling that James, the CEO, didn't comprehend what I'd done. Are the copies done? Indeed, it's finished. You may now proceed. James accepted the original and the copies I had taken from the copier and placed them on his desk, but he didn't even glance at them. Instead, he made a chin gesture. I exited his office after making sure my duty was completed. A coworker I frequently see in the corridor sympathized with me when I told him about James' phoning. The CEO has been forcing other staff members to use computers to handle data and generate copies. Really, a CEO's poor technological skills are a concern. It appeared that everyone knew how incompetent James was, so I wasn't the only one having trouble. We both laughed till we were exhausted. We believed that with a new CEO, things would improve. Yes, this CEO isn't as good as the last one. We joked our way out of there, and I returned to my work. Everyone was aware of James' incapacity and hoped he would be replaced soon, but our desires were unlikely to come true. James exacerbated the situation. Remote work is not necessary. Being a home worker is basically being indolent. Even in the midst of a cyclone, everyone needs to enter. Our organization had previously used remote work amid a large viral outbreak. For a while, I worked from home, and I was surprised at how convenient it was to not have to travel. However, James thought that working from home was a sign of laziness and mandated that everyone report to work every day, no matter what. We were vehemently against this. Why are you giving up your remote job? Some youths are working from home while wearing pajamas, according to what I saw on TV. Such apathy won't be tolerated in our organization. James was attempting to alter corporate policies in light of television programming. The fact that his capricious choices were making our load heavier was intolerable. I have 3 small kids, a childbearing employee then said. I was able to take care of them when they were ill and finish my work because of remote employment. Give the children to somebody else. Invest in a nanny or similar. I don't make enough money to hire a nanny. This infuriated James, who bellowed, "Low pay is due to your lack of ability. Please don't hold me responsible." James modified policies at will and disregarded all employee appeals after that. Everyone distrusted him, myself included, because of his self-serving actions. I started to worry that, in order to protect myself, I might need to quit this company if things went any worse. I began to bring specific things from the office everywhere I went. Though I hope I'd never use them, I had them just in case. I'm struggling to meet deadlines at work today and am experiencing discomfort. I was hoping to wrap up on time and had a lovely Friday, but yesterday, right before I left, a salesperson gave me extra stuff to do. They added, "Make sure the deadline stays the same," to their immediate agreement to a client's request for additional features, leaving me to work late as everyone else went home. Why does this always end up falling on me? Damn it. I have to work overtime on Friday. Even if my working hours increased, I would still receive overtime money, so I complained but refrained from protesting. That was bearable when you considered the additional compensation. My primary motivation for remaining at this firm is their overtime compensation. Friends who are engineers at other businesses complain about having to work from home and not getting paid overtime or being prohibited from working overtime. My firm might still be decent in comparison to them. But with James's recent policy changes, their future was in doubt. The first pay period after James took over as CEO was next week. This was the day I had been waiting for, my reward for working so much extra. When payday finally arrived, pay slips were given out. Excited, I looked up my amount and was taken aback. Why is it lower than it was previously? Glancing around, I noticed workers contentedly debating how they would use their salary. I went straight to the CEO's office because I was upset that my pay stub did not reflect any overtime pay. But before I faced James, I made sure I looked through the things I was carrying. "James, why is there no overtime pay on my slip?" I yelled at him, but he was apathetically reading the newspaper. I took the paper from him because I was irritated by his lack of interest, which caused him to become agitated. "Because you're just slacking off." He reclaimed the newspaper from my grasp. "You stay late every day just to get overtime pay, right?" I was enraged by his ignorance and got goosebumps from his arrogant expression. "Pardon me, but I put in extra hours to make sure that my clients are happy. Our business excels in offering a safe management method. You're working late because you're slow at your job." His derisive chuckle enraged me even more. "Let's say for argument's sake that I'm at fault, but legally, you must pay overtime." I gave a solid pushback, but James only chuckled at me, seemingly unaffected. "What occurs if I fail to compensate a subpar worker? Do you think I'll go to jail?" "Maybe not arrested, but your reputation and the company's will surely suffer." He scowled when he heard this. "So please review my overtime pay immediately." I pounded his desk with my pay stub. If I persisted this far, I figured he would grudgingly comply. I wouldn't mind if they paid me fairly, even though there might be conflict between us. It would be resolved with just remuneration. However, what he said next gave me no hope at all. "There's no money to pay someone who plays around on the company's dime." "How come?" I was taken aback by his response and left stunned. He did not intend to understand, even though he was putting in extra hours for the benefit of the company. "You consider yourself an engineer, but in reality, you're simply a computer geek. Your work may be done by anyone in another department." "What? The mechanism of our business is under my control." However, James grimaced as he got up from his chair and gestured toward me. "You are fired, you lazy thief, playing on the computer." I felt all of my feelings for the company disappear at that very instant. My labor seemed like play to him. Who would follow a CEO that doesn't know what his people do for a living or doesn't pay them properly? "I appreciate everything that you have done. Farewell." I nodded to James while picking up my pay stub. "Wait, are you really okay with being fired?" It seems that my cool acceptance surprised him. "I'll stay through the month to complete the handover." I then departed from his office. After that, I took some time to prepare to quit the company where I had worked for more than 10 years and to transfer my responsibilities to reliable colleagues. On my last day, my coworkers gave me a flower and said goodbye, even though they were sad to see me depart. Although it was bittersweet to bid James farewell, I was disappointed not to get paid what was due to me. I felt bad that I hadn't pressed for my overtime compensation. However, my phone started ringing nonstop the day I resigned. I disregarded the unsettling feeling of seeing an unknown number phoning since the morning. But after 10 calls, I gave up and decided to answer just to vent my frustration. Stop being so persistent. Whoa, don't yell at me. I was surprised to see it was James. James, what do you want? Come to the office right now. He was hurrying me and sounded desperate. Why? I take it that I'm no longer needed there. Just go quickly. According to your coworkers, they require you. It appeared like not only James, but also the other staff members were in a panic. I picked up my luggage and made my way to the office, worried about them. Upon my arrival, I discovered that everyone was engrossed in their laptops and was overloaded with phone calls. Jason, all the staff turned to face me at once as soon as they saw me. Jason, please lend a hand. What took place? I requested them to explain from the beginning after calming them down. The problem surfaced this morning, one day following my resignation. The person I had given the task of handling the handover to attempted to resolve a problem that had arisen in the management system. Important data, such as client information and thorough product records, are stored in the management system. The company would suffer greatly if this information was leaked and utilized improperly. If handled calmly, the issue could have been resolved swiftly, but James's interference made things worse. An error that wasn't addressed in the handbook happened when he attempted to solve it himself, and only I was able to fix it. There was a chance that data would leak if the problem wasn't fixed, which would seriously erode customer confidence. Every employee was manually moving customer data to a different file in order to stop this. James arrived as I was wrapping up my explanation of the circumstances. You're here, I see. I mean, this is beyond anyone else's capabilities. Quickly fix the computer. Asking someone who has resigned for assistance is awkward, but we don't have anyone else to turn to. Jason, please assist us. I paused to consider my options before responding. Then I'll demand compensation for wrongful termination and my unpaid overtime, in response to pleas for assistance from James and the staff. I extended my hand and gave James a fierce look. After firing me, it's convenient to ask for assistance. Given that the firing was your fault, I'm requesting $10,000 in payment. James became visibly agitated and started to perspire. Everyone in the office looked at him. Why should I give you money? He insisted that I was slacking off and that I had been disobeying my responsibilities. I never took a break. We would have gotten complaints if I had been careless. The sales staff in the corner of the room looked aside nervously when I glanced at them. They simply accepted the expectations of the client and gave me all of the job. Even though I managed deliveries for multiple businesses on my own, I never had any complaints. That's how much I valued my work. You made a mistake in terminating me. How come? You got yourself into this predicament due to your lack of engineering comprehension. With all eyes on him, James felt a sense of terror. I'll fix the problem. Please accept the compensation and apologize for calling me lazy. I hoped that with this ultimatum, he would at last give in. If he did, I could assist the staff right away. But sleazy thief. I never stated that. He mocked me with a sly grin. Stop painting me as the villain. I see. So you're still attempting to avoid accountability. His failure to own up to his deeds made me sigh. Unpaid overtime is a legal issue, as I told you. Only if it is accurate. Have any evidence? James gave me a sly little smile. The fact that he believed I was bluffing gave him confidence. However, there was something in my shoe that could destroy that self-assurance. Yes, I have evidence. What? I reached inside my purse for a sound recorder. I brought it to work in case something happened, and kept it in my suit pocket to record right away if necessary when I thought about moving jobs. I did, of course, videotape the exchange I had with James the day he dismissed me. He cocked his head at the voice recorder I showed him. "What is that? An outdated mobile phone?" This voice recorder is contemporary. With a single button press, conversations can be recorded. I pushed play after turning up the volume. The staff started whispering as James and I continued our talk. James's face became pale as he heard his voice and fixed his gaze on the voice recorder. James's remarks, "You are fired. You lazy thief," closed the tape. I could hear the staff whispering to me as I was using the computer. "That is very bad. Jason is a very skilled engineer. Using a computer to play games? The CEO reads newspapers about horse racing all day long." They gave James a really disdainful stare. Talking his way out of this was not an option. I chose to exert even more pressure. I pulled a stack of papers out of my backpack and showed James. "These are my time card printouts. They make my working hours and overtime quite evident. I'm able to sue you and turn these in to the Labor Standards Office. The office would look into the matter and the business would be closely examined if it turned out that he wasn't paying overtime. This would definitely reveal James's incapacity as a CEO. James was sweating a lot and wasn't sure what to do. Whatever happens to the company, I don't care. Remember that I was fired." I grinned, and the staff gathered around James. "James, kindly comply with Jason's requests. Things will only get worse if we don't find a solution to this problem." Under pressure from the staff, James hesitantly mumbled, "Fine. Simply wait a little while." He hurried to the local bank and gave me the unpaid overtime and compensation, confirming that the sum was approximately $112,000 in total. I put it in my pocket when James seized my arm. "I fulfilled your requests. Now, swiftly fix the system." I got it. I swiftly opened the administration screen after turning on the machine and found the issue. It was quickly fixed by me. The management system was back up in a matter of minutes, and I had a conversation with the worker who was in charge of the transfer. The mistake is easily correctable. Later, I'll email you the instructions. "Wonderful. Thank you so much," the staff exclaimed. "Jason is just remarkable. In an instant, he fixed what no one else could." Although I'm accustomed to handling these situations, I was a little uncomfortable to get such high compliments. Is Jason really that good? I wonder. He is, of course, the only engineer we have. With their eyes wide and fingers in their mouths, they appeared astonished. Maybe James even came to understand the value of an engineer in the end. But after receiving my pay, I felt that my work here was finished. I'm departing now that my task is done. Kindly stop making calls at all. James gave me a melancholy glance. You are no longer useful to me. Leave now. The worker's expressions hardened as he spat out these comments, gazing at him with bitterness. I spoke something to them before I left. Don't hold your complaints inside. Share them with others. Speaking up is important sometimes. I praised them and departed from the organization. Later on, I was looking for a new career and helping a friend with their work. Seek employment in my 40s. In my 40s, it was difficult to find a new career, but thanks to my friend's connections, I had several opportunities. I was optimistic that the move would go well until I got an unexpected message from an old coworker. Remarkably, following my departure from the company, James was voted out at the shareholders' meeting. The main stockholders were notified about the system issues by someone. They also brought up James's dereliction of duty, the Labor Standards Office's investigation, and a petition signed by every worker calling for his dismissal. Strong disagreement to James's decision to eject me after I settled the dispute was the driving cause for the petition. James was fired as a result of the staff's lack of faith in him. In addition, any executive who backed James was fired. Thus, the management team was essentially replaced. Now, the staff wanted to put me forward for the next success. I was quite aback to learn this from a former coworker. The CEO. Me? Not at all. It is not possible for a former employee to assume that position. I declined right away, but everyone else in the office felt that I was the best person to make the decision. Surprisingly, all of the stockholders thought positively of my efforts to keep the company afloat during the crisis. But I'm only an engineer. The system issue was limited to my area of competence. I am not cut out to be the CEO. Although I was flattered to receive compliments, I graciously turned down the employee's offer. However, the workers begged me to come back to the company the following day when they visited my home. Jason, you made several attempts to discuss upholding the company's policies with James through negotiation. We can only rely on you to be our leader. Please, let's resume our collaboration. Their cries for help nearly won me over. I appreciate you coming here, but I was ready to say no when one of the staff members announced that James had left the organization. This is our opportunity to make the workplace better. Yes, James lost his job. It was because I didn't want to follow James that I took my firing. I could improve the working atmosphere now that he was no longer there and I had the chance to rebuild the business. We'll support you, Jason, so please come back. I agreed and took on the role of CEO, inspired by their zeal and the prospect of starting the business over from scratch. I created a new structure and updated the company's management policies, taking into account the feedback from the staff. I was able to improve the work atmosphere and conditions that had previously caused dissatisfaction by using my expertise as a former employee. The outcome was a far more comfortable workplace than it had been. I have a lot of pressure now that I am the CEO, since I know that my leadership will determine the fate of the staff. That being said, I lead a solid team, and the company succeeds because of its workers. I am not able to make money on my own. I'm appreciative of their confidence and encouragement, and I'm committed to raising our game. After that, there was a significant reorganization, and we advertised job positions to add personnel to departments that were short-staffed. We started interviewing the many experienced individuals who came through the recruitment process. While the CEO, the HR manager came up to me while I was waiting for the last round of interviews. His face was expressionless as he handed me a CV. The moment I saw that, I started giggling. "This is J. James Smith," I uttered. James Smith's name and photo were written on the application. James had applied to return to the organization after being sacked. He ought to have been disqualified in the first screening due to his terrible reputation, but he managed to get through by accident. As soon as I was asked what to do, I gave the command, "Get rid of him." He no longer belonged here, and I'm not sure why he believed he could return to the company he was expelled from. I was hoping he would give up and find work elsewhere. I had just finished my day's interviews and was heading back to the CEO's office when an employee barged in. "It's urgent, Jason. James is attempting to barge in." "How come?" It appeared as though he had returned after being sent away. I went to where he was before things got out of hand. James and a few staff members were fighting when I got to the door. "Permit me to enter. I used to be the CEO." I urged, "Please leave," observing the staff members straining to manage him. I intervened by speaking up. "James, please calm down. What prompted you to attend the interview?" "I want to resume my duties as CEO even if I was sacked. Though it didn't go well the last time, I'll win back everyone's confidence this time." I smiled sardonically as I looked from employee to employee, taking note of James's commitment. James murmured, "Wait a minute," as he glanced at me in confusion. "Williams, I thought I fired you. Why are you in this place?" Now that he was more at ease, he appeared perplexed by my presence. And Staffer raised his voice on my behalf, obviously irritated. "You're being disrespectful to President Williams." "President Williams?" James looked at me many times, blinking in surprise. After giving him a kind grin, I said, "Yes, I've been reinstated as the new CEO after you." James took a step back, appearing deceived by his old associates. Are you going to be the CEO again? You ought to abandon that notion. It was unexpectedly thrilling to see the man who had denigrated me seem shocked. You're not hired, but I wish you success elsewhere. James clung to me, nearly crying, even after I told him to get out of the entrance. Jason, please help me. I have nowhere to go. I'll work in sales or administration. Simply employ me. Even a copier is above your capabilities. You disturb the workplace and treat people with contempt. Who would employ such a person? Now go. I spoke out and dialed security. Hold on. I was in error. Please pardon me. James sobbed and pleaded for mercy, but he was let out by security officers. He then attended many interviews but was turned down each time. He now works day jobs to support himself. Despite having some assets as the vice president, his wife took more than half of his assets as alimony and filed for divorce once he was sacked. His savings are therefore almost completely depleted, and he must quickly find a better-paying job to avoid his lifestyle collapsing. Even now, he consistently gets fired for being careless while no one is looking. After he ultimately faced the repercussions of always pushing work onto others, he probably thought, if only I had worked more seriously, this wouldn't have happened. It's too late to realize his foolishness as he approaches retirement age. However, since beginning the new business, I have performed better and have been successful in opening a branch office. In addition, after moving up from engineering to CEO, business magazines began interviewing me. My reputation grew over time in this way, and we added more business partners. We eventually joined the ranks of huge organizations after seeing the potential for international expansion and ceasing to operate as a small to medium-sized company. I keep putting in a lot of effort for the coworkers who have faith in and followed me.
Mom, Dad, and Megan were the ideal little family, and I remember those days as if they were yesterday. We were simply regular people going about our lives, nothing special or wealthy. Dad was an accountant and was constantly engrossed in statistics, yet he would smile when he arrived home. Mom was a teacher who shared compassion and wisdom everywhere she went. We would load up our rusty station wagon and head out on the weekends to explore the nation. Mom would sing along, horribly off-pitch, but not caring at all, as Dad blasted his favorite oldies. Sitting in the back, I would roll my eyes while secretly enjoying every second of it. I loved those road trips so much. We used to visit dimly lit eateries where we would share a large milkshake and order oily burgers. Every time my fries were taken, Mom would say, "I'm just testing them for poison, sweetie." We would visit the neighborhood mall while we weren't on the road. I used to take them shopping and make them try on outrageous clothes and beg for the newest gadgets. Dad was quiet, but Mom was the voice of reason. When Mom wasn't looking, he'd give me a few more coins and say, "Our little secret, Meggie." Pizza evenings fell on Fridays. We used to order takeout, unwind on the living room floor, and watch corny films. I'd fill my face with pepperoni, not thinking about anything except the moment, as Dad tried to explain the storylines and Mom silenced him. When my mother began to feel exhausted all the time, I was 11. We didn't give it much thought at first since teaching is a demanding profession, but then the medical visits, the anxious mutterings, and the whispered phone conversations started. I had no idea what was going on. I sensed the shift in the atmosphere even though no one told me anything. The road trip ceased, the laughing subsided, and silent, uncomfortable meals took the place of pizza nights. I heard Dad talking on the phone one night, his voice breaking. "Mike, the therapies aren't helping. I have no idea what we will do." That's when I realized Mom had a serious problem and that our idyllic little world was about to fall apart. I longed to return to those carefree times, stop time, and live in that blissful, ignorant bubble indefinitely. However, that isn't how life operates. There was nothing I could do to halt the approaching storm. I close my eyes for the time being and attempt to recall the pleasant memories, like the taste of Friday night pizza, the sound of my dad laughing, and the scent of my mother's perfume. I wish I could go back to the life I once knew, but all I have left are those memories. It was a Tuesday at the time. It was pizza night, so that's why I remember it. Nevertheless, there was only quiet and the awful beeping of hospital equipment instead of pizza, laughing, or Mom. Dad said, "Megan, sweetie," his voice quivering. Mom, she's gone. That was it. My entire universe fell apart. Mom was gone, my closest friend and my rock. I was unable to breathe or concentrate. My hair was drenched in tears when my father gave me a hug, leaving me speechless. The following several weeks passed in a flurry of casseroles, quiet conversations, and black clothing. It was impossible for me to eat. I kept waiting for Mom to open the door and tell me that everything had been a nightmare, but she never did. Then something changed around 6 months after Mom passed away. Dad began to go out more. Right up until I saw her, I felt he was getting better. She wasn't at all like Mom. She was tall and blonde. Karen was her name, and she had a grin that hung just below her lips. "Megan, this is Karen," Dad began, becoming apprehensive. "We've been seeing each other." It seemed unbelievable to me. He was taking Mom's place before she had gone cold in her grave. With her face inches from mine, Karen knelt down. "Hello, Megan. I've been hearing a lot about you." Karen's eyes become hard and analytical, and she stopped smiling when Dad wasn't watching. I could tell this woman was danger right there. Karen was everywhere for the following several weeks. She would join us for supper, watch TV, and even make an effort to assist me with my schoolwork. But the mask would come off the instant Dad turned around. When we were by ourselves one day, she growled, "Listen, kid. I intend to remain here. Please don't think about destroying this for me." I attempted to inform Dad. I did, truly. He only shook his head, though. "I realize this is difficult for you, Megan, but Karen is a lovely person. You're only envious. Perhaps you should have a conversation with someone." Feeling envious, it seemed unbelievable to me. My own father believed this to be a fabrication. Before I knew it, I was being informed I had difficulty with change and adjustment issues while sitting in a therapist's office. Karen had managed to persuade Dad, our family, and even our neighbors that I was having problems. I would hear her remark on the phone, "Poor Megan. She's going through so much hardship. There are psychological issues. We're giving her the assistance she requires." Then the bombshell arrived. Dad broke the news a year and a half after Mom passed away. Karen, Megan, and myself are getting married. In order to allow you time to acclimate, we felt that spending the summer at camp would be ideal. However, I was aware of the reality. So that my sour face, as Karen described it, wouldn't mar their lovely day, they were shipping me off. I left for camp with a heavy heart, knowing that when I returned, everything would be different. My home wouldn't be mine anymore. My family was changing, and there was nothing I could do about it. I returned from camp with a knot in my stomach. The house looked the same from the outside, but as soon as I stepped through the door, I knew everything had changed. "Welcome home, Megan," Karen said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We need to talk about room arrangements. With the baby coming, we'll need to make some changes." My head spun. "Baby? What baby?" Dad's face lit up. "That's right, you don't know. Karen's pregnant. You're going to be a big sister." Karen led me upstairs, chattering about nursery colors and baby names. We stopped at my room, or what used to be my room. "We started converting this into the nursery," Karen said, pushing open the door. My heart sank. My posters were gone, replaced by pastel wallpaper. My desk had vanished, a crib standing in its place. "Where's my stuff?" I managed to choke out. Karen waved dismissively. "Oh, we moved you to the guest room. It's cozier anyway." The guest room was barely bigger than a closet. My things were piled haphazardly on the bed, some boxes still sealed. "This is temporary, right?" I asked, looking at Dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Well, Meggie, with a new baby." I got the message. I was being pushed out. Replaced. The next few months were a blur of doctor's appointments, baby showers, and me trying to make myself as small as possible. Karen's belly grew, and with it, her control over our lives. Then one crisp fall morning, my little brother was born. Despite everything, when I held him for the first time, I felt a surge of love. For a moment, I thought maybe things would get better. But Karen had other plans. "Careful, Megan," she'd say, snatching him away. "You might drop him." Or, "He's sleeping now. Maybe you can see him later." There was always an excuse, always a reason why I couldn't spend time with my brother. Dad was too busy with work and the new baby to notice. Years passed. I threw myself into school, counting down the days until I could leave for college. My brother grew into a sweet, curious kid, but Karen made sure our interactions were limited. Finally, my senior year arrived. One night, I overheard Karen and Dad arguing. "She needs to learn responsibility," Karen insisted. "A job right out of high school would do her good." Dad's voice was firm. "No. Sarah wanted her to go to college. We set aside money for it. Megan's going." I'd never been so grateful for my dad standing up for me. When my acceptance letter came, I cried with relief. I was getting out. I was going to start my own life, away from Karen's manipulations. On moving day, Dad helped me pack the car. Karen and my brother stayed home. "I'm proud of you, Meggie," Dad said, hugging me goodbye. "Your mom would be too." As I drove away, watching my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror, I felt a mix of sadness and hope. I was leaving behind the only home I'd known, and the little brother I never really got to know. But I was also driving towards freedom, towards a future where I could be myself without Karen's shadow looming over me. College was like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make something of myself. Advertising became my passion, a world where creativity met strategy, and I could finally express myself freely. But even as I reveled in my newfound independence, there was always a nagging ache in my heart. My little brother, barely 6 when I left, was growing up without me. During rare visits home, I'd catch glimpses of the amazing kid he was becoming. "Megan, look what I drew," he'd exclaim, showing me his latest masterpiece. I'd ruffle his hair, cherishing these brief moments. "It's awesome, buddy. You're quite the artist." Karen would inevitably interrupt, whisking him away for some urgent task or another. The distance between us grew with each passing year. Graduation day arrived, a bittersweet triumph. As I stood in my cap and gown, scanning the crowd, I realized Dad and Karen weren't there. Later, a terse text arrived. "Congratulations on graduating. Dad, Karen." It stung, but I refused to let it dampen my spirits. I had a future to build. Thanks to my internships and portfolio, I landed a job at a hip advertising agency in the city. Grandma, Mom's mom, and my guardian angel helped me secure a tiny but cozy apartment. "Your mother would be so proud," she said, pressing a check into my hand. "This is for rent. She always wanted you to have a good start." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was challenging but rewarding. I made friends, went on dates, and slowly began to heal from the wounds of my past. For 3 years, I lived in relative peace, with only occasional awkward holiday visits to break the calm. Then out of the blue, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. "Megan, it's Dad. I have some news. We've sold the house and bought a new place, bigger, more modern. I was hoping, well, would you help us move? It might be a good chance for us to reconnect." I was speechless. After years of distance, this sudden olive branch felt surreal. "Karen would be happy to see you, too," he added, though I doubted that. "And your brother, Megan, he's 12 now. He asks about you all the time." I closed my eyes, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect myself from more hurt. But another part, the part that still missed my family and longed for reconciliation, won out. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll come." Dad's relief was palpable. "I'll text you the address. See you this weekend." As I packed a bag for the weekend, my emotions swirled. Hope mingled with anxiety, excitement with dread. Whatever happened, this visit would change everything. I just didn't know if it would be for better or worse. I pulled up to the address, my jaw dropping at the sight. The house was enormous, all sleek lines and modern architecture. It looked nothing like the cozy home I grew up in. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Dad opened it, a hesitant smile on his face. "Meggie, you made it." "Hi, Dad," I said, stepping inside. Karen appeared behind him, her smile as plastic as ever. "Megan, how nice of you to come," she said, her tone suggesting anything but. I looked around, expecting to see my brother. "Where's?" "Oh, he's staying with my parents for the weekend," Karen cut in smoothly. "We thought it would be easier to move without him underfoot." The look in her eyes told me everything. This was deliberate. She'd made sure my brother wouldn't be here, denying me even this small chance to reconnect with him. Swallowing my disappointment and anger, I forced a smile. "So where do you want me to start?" For the next few hours, I threw myself into the work. I scrubbed floors, arranged furniture, and hung curtains. It was easier than trying to make conversation with Dad or enduring Karen's false pleasantries. As I was sorting through some boxes in what would be the study, I came across a pile of framed photos. My heart stopped as I recognized one particular frame. It was a portrait of Mom, the one that used to hang in my childhood bedroom. Her smile beamed at me from beneath a layer of dust. Clutching the photo, I walked into the living room where Dad and Karen were discussing paint colors. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "why is Mom's picture in a pile of junk?" Dad's face fell, a mix of guilt and sadness crossing his features. He opened his mouth to speak, but Karen beat him to it. "Oh, that old thing," she said dismissively. "We decided those photos don't really fit with the new decor. They're a bit superfluous, don't you think?" Superfluous? The word hit me like a slap. My mother's memory, reduced to an outdated decoration. Superfluous. I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "This is my mother." "Your wife," I added, looking at Dad. Dad at least had the decency to look ashamed. "Megan, we didn't mean." But I was already moving, gathering up every photo of Mom I could find. I found her old jewelry box, a few of her books. Without a word, I carried them out to my car, ignoring Karen's protests and Dad's weak attempts to explain. As I placed the last item in my trunk, I felt a storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Anger at Karen's callousness, disappointment in Dad's spinelessness, and a deep, aching sadness for the mother I'd lost and the family that seemed beyond repair. I slammed the trunk shut, the sound echoing in the quiet street. For a moment, I considered getting in the car and driving away, leaving this mess behind once and for all. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of Mom, her voice in my head telling me to be strong. Maybe it was the thought of my little brother, who I still hadn't seen. Or maybe it was just sheer stubbornness, refusing to let Karen win. Whatever it was, I found myself walking back into the house. Karen was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding to avoid confrontation. Dad stood in the hallway, looking lost. So I went back to cleaning, trying not to think about Dad's betrayal. As I was about to leave, Dad caught my arm. "Megan, wait. There's something else." I turned, eyebrow raised. "What now?" He shifted uncomfortably. "We're having a housewarming party in a few days. We would really appreciate your help." Before I could respond, Karen swooped in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Oh yes, Megan, we could really use your assistance. Perhaps you could handle the catering. I'll take care of the cleaning, invitations, and overall organization." I opened my mouth to refuse, but Dad jumped in. "Please, Meggie, all our relatives and friends will be there. We can't manage without you." His pleading eyes wore me down. Despite everything, a small part of me still wanted to make him happy. "Fine," I sighed. "I'll help with the food. I'll even pay for it myself." Karen's smile widened. "Wonderful. We're thinking of an Italian theme, to christen the new kitchen." I nodded, an idea forming. "Actually, I know the best Italian restaurant. I'll order from there, quality guaranteed." Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. "What's the name of this restaurant?" "Bella Not," I replied, watching her carefully. She nodded, looking satisfied. "Sounds perfect. We'll leave it in your capable hands then." As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Karen's sudden agreeableness was suspicious, but I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. Over the next few days, I threw myself into planning the perfect menu. I called my friend Maria, owner of Bella Nut. "Megan, it's been too long." She answered cheerfully. "Hey Maria, I need a favor. My dad's having a housewarming party, and I'm in charge of food. Think you can help me out?" "For you." "Anything." "What are you thinking?" We spent an hour crafting the perfect Italian spread. Antipasti platters, handmade pastas, tiramisu for dessert, the works. I spared no expense, wanting to prove I could handle this responsibility. After finalizing the order, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Despite everything, a small part of me hoped this party might be a turning point. Maybe, just maybe, we could start to heal our fractured family. The next week dragged by slowly. I kept myself busy with work, but my mind often wandered to the upcoming party. I checked and double-checked the order, making sure everything was perfect. The day before the housewarming party, my phone rang. It was Maria from Bella Not. "Hey Megan, I'm a bit confused. Your stepmother called yesterday and asked to move the food delivery to today. Did the party date change?" My heart sank. "What?" "No, it's supposed to be tomorrow." "Oh," Maria sounded worried. "Well, I wanted to double-check with you before making any changes." I thanked her, my mind racing. After hanging up, I immediately called Karen, my suspicions on high alert. "Hi Karen, just wanted to confirm the party details for tomorrow," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Oh yes, everything's set for tomorrow at 7:00 p.m., she replied smoothly. "We're looking forward to it." I thanked her and ended the call, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. It was clear now, Karen had tried to change the delivery date behind my back. She wanted me to miss the party entirely. Taking a deep breath, I called Maria back. "Hey, it's me again. I need to cancel the order," I said, my voice tight. "Cancel? But Megan, are you sure? It's a lot of food, and it's all paid for." I know. Keep the payment. Consider it a gift. Use the food for the restaurant if you can. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. The betrayal stung, but a part of me wasn't surprised. This was classic Karen, always finding new ways to push me out. The same evening, curiosity got the better of me. I opened my social media and saw my cousin was live streaming from the party. There it was, the housewarming, in full swing, happening right now. A day early, I watched, a mix of hurt and anger building inside me, as Karen showed off the new house. She posed for the camera, pointing out design features and accepting compliments from guests. Suddenly, a voice off camera asked, "Where's Megan?" I thought she'd be here. Karen's face changed, a look of false concern replacing her smile. "Oh, you know Megan. She's always been a bit unsociable. Some mental health issues, poor dear. She said she couldn't make it." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Mental health issues? Unsociable? The lies flowed so easily from her lips. Karen quickly changed the subject, steering the conversation back to the house. "Now who's ready for some amazing Italian food? It should be here any minute." The guests cheered, and Karen beamed at the camera. Half an hour passed, and I could see the guests starting to look restless. Karen's smile became strained as she kept assuring everyone the food would arrive any minute now. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the live stream. Karen's perfectly crafted facade was crumbling before my eyes. Her smile had become a grimace as she dialed the restaurant's number, the speakerphone amplifying every word for the gathered guests. "Hello, Bellad. This is Karen. Where is our food order?" The response was clear and devastating. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that order was canceled earlier today by Megan. There won't be any delivery." Karen's face contorted with rage. "What? That little?" she shrieked, turning to my father. "Call Megan right now." Dad, looking flustered, pulled out his phone. I watched, heart pounding, as he dialed my number. When I answered, his voice boomed through the speakerphone. "Megan, how could you cancel the food order? You've ruined everything." Taking a deep breath, I replied calmly, "Dad, why did you change the date of the housewarming? Why wasn't I invited?" The room fell silent. Dad's face paled as he stammered, "We," Karen said. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Guests exchanged meaningful glances, eyeing Karen and Dad with suspicion. Suddenly, Karen snatched the phone from Dad's hand. "You ungrateful brat," she screeched. "After everything we've done for you, you're trying to sabotage us, aren't you?" I let her rant for a moment before speaking, my voice steady and clear. "I think everyone can see now who really has mental health issues in this family, and it's not me." Karen's hysterical shouting filled the room, but I could see the damage was done. Guests were backing away, some already heading for the door. "Karen, I'm tired of being your scapegoat," I firmly declared. "And I'm tired of seeing you pick her above your own daughter, Dad. Farewell." With trembling hands but unwavering determination, I hung up the phone and closed the live feed. The deception and deceit had come to an end. Everything was exposed for everyone to see. I disregarded Dad's and other family members' constant calls and messages in the days that followed. I required time to reflect and recover. My father arrived at my residence 1 week later. His eyes had a crimson ring. He appeared lethargic. "I'm so sorry, Megan," he said. I was visually impaired. I let Karen to take charge of everything, and I forgot what was most important. Please give me the opportunity to put things right. Something about his look made me want to smash the door in his face, but I refrained. "Dad, it's not that easy. You gave up on me. You've disregarded me." He broke off. "I know," he replied. "However, I wish to alter. I swear I'll perform better. Maggie, please. We carefully and slowly started to mend our friendship. Dad began to call frequently, and we had weekly coffee dates. At times, Dad even took my younger brother with him, out of Karen's prying gaze. Regarding Karen, I learned through rumors that she had turned into a bit of a family outcast. With her deceit revealed, she withdrew into a harsh shell. After several months, life found a new rhythm. I poured myself into my work and moved up the advertising agency's ranks. My emotional upheaval served as gasoline for my creative explosion. I'm not sure what my family's future holds. Healing takes time since the wounds are deep. However, I feel hopeful for the first time in a long time. I'm following my passions, living life on my terms, and cautiously and gently letting love back into my heart. I can just hear Mom's words as I gaze out my apartment window at the city lights. She used to remark, "You're stronger than you know, Meggie." Furthermore, what do you know? She was accurate.
It's hard to believe that such a thing still happens these days. I found myself thinking vaguely about it in the narrow hallway of my apartment. There was a thick envelope on the small showbox. Inside it was payoff money. I had a girlfriend. Her name was Michelle. She was the only daughter of the chairman of the Johnson General Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in town. Last night, I proposed to Michelle, and this is the result. Suddenly, Michelle's father showed up at my apartment and looked at me as if I were trash. He said, "I won't let my daughter marry an uneducated loser." Then, saying it's payoff money, he left a thick envelope on the table. Michelle seems to have had her cell phone taken away by her father, so I can't get in touch with her. Just like that, my relationship with Michelle abruptly ended. My name is Rick, and I turned 32 this year. Currently, I'm the vice president of a gaming company I started with a friend. There were a lot of ups and downs to get here, but I believe everything has been a learning experience for me. Deep in my heart, there are things that I've yet to fully come to terms with. My father passed away when I was young, and my mother raised me on her own. Ever since middle school, I wanted to start working early. Being the eldest son, I have 3 younger sisters. When I told my mom that I had decided to quit high school and work while attending night school, she looked at me with guilt and bowed deeply to me. It wasn't that I loved studying, but telling her about the night school was more of an excuse to make her understand. I remember feeling humbled when she bowed so deeply. Together, my mom and I supported our family, ensuring my sisters could follow their desired paths. That gave me a lot of confidence. In the end, I kept working at a florist that I've been part of since my part-time days. That's when I first met Michelle. I think I was 25 and she was 22. Every Monday and Thursday afternoon, she would come into the shop to buy fresh flowers. She never bought large bouquets, just a few stems, and then she'd leave. We'd exchange a few words every time. Little by little, I found myself drawn to her shy and modest character. Michelle is the kind of girl you don't often see these days, with a quiet, reserved, and pure demeanour. Even someone as thick-skinned as me could immediately tell from the way she carried herself that she came from a good upbringing. On Valentine's Day, when she gave me chocolates, I realized for the first time that she had feelings for me. I asked her out right then and there. Our relationship was smooth sailing. We never had an argument. Life was hectic for me. Being invited to co-found a business by a friend might have been a contributing factor. The only time Michelle and I could really meet was on Sundays. With my sister still in school and tuition fees to pay, I didn't have a lot of money for myself. Our dates were mostly in the park. Every time, Michelle would bring along a homemade lunch, and we'd spend our time in the park. I loved that. After dating for a year, I mustered up the courage to propose to her. I felt that if Michelle stayed by my side for the rest of my life, I could push myself many times harder. I couldn't afford a ring worth 3 months of my salary and got her a cheaper one, but Michelle cried tears of joy after she saw it. She kept repeating, "Thank you." I swore I'd make her happy, but by the next morning, I felt like I'd been thrown into hell. The last time I saw Michelle, she had a tear-streaked face from crying with happiness. Our time together ended right there. Starting today, we have a few new recruits coming in. I was approached by HR as soon as I arrived at the office. The company had grown unimaginably since its inception, with almost 30 employees. After my heartbreak, I got seriously involved in a startup with a friend. He founded a gaming company. I've always loved games, and after seeing a game I created, he approached me to co-found the company. I dedicated myself to this job. The company grew rapidly. Now we're focusing on nurturing esports talents. My current job involves scouting esports players. It's quite a fulfilling job. Many young folks aspire to be professional esports players, but taking that first step can be challenging. I believe it's because its recognition in society is still somewhat limited. When job prospects come up, I bet very few parents would understand if their child says, "I want to be a pro gamer." Many kids are already making money by streaming games, but few share that with their parents. Streamers who make a living off game streaming need to put in the effort to make others understand their line of work. I support those kids who feel stuck because those around them don't understand what they're passionate about. I believe my job is to back their dreams. The recruits coming in today are between 18 and 26 years old. We plan to hire them as professionals. Among them, there's one guy I see as a key player. His name is Key. He's a player who excels in multiplayer online battle arenas, MOBA. Simply put, MOBA is a game style where you team up and cooperate with allies to attack and conquer the enemy's base. It requires both strategy and ability to make split-second decisions. I felt Key had an exceptional talent. "I'm Key Johnson. It is a pleasure to meet you all," he said, introducing himself. He's tall and good-looking, although he seemed a bit rough around the edges. The way he responded and carried himself showed he came from a good upbringing. A good young man. The women in the office were clearly impressed by him. After a brief greeting, Key started handling insurance paperwork and other administrative tasks in the HR department. It's a busy day since there are other new hires, and each needs to be directed to their respective departments. That's when I overheard a surprised voice from one of the female clerks. My feet stopped dead in their tracks when the clerk said, "He's the son of the Johnson General Hospital chairman. You know, Johnson General Hospital is the home of a girl like... Can't forget Michelle." I remember Michelle mentioning that she's an only daughter with one younger brother who doesn't have the inclination or aptitude for medical studies. Now I understand why Michelle's dad told me her future husband has to be a doctor. It might be pointless to think about it now, but if Key had gone to med school and become a doctor, maybe Michelle, and I could have gotten married. I was called an uneducated trash. The opposition to our marriage wasn't just because of inheritance issues. I admit that I had my own shortcomings, yet I couldn't help but wonder what if I had become a doctor. A fact I never realized when I first scouted Key. Would I have recruited him if I'd known he was Michelle's brother? Mixing personal feelings with business is downright unacceptable. I kept reminding myself of that. Otherwise, I couldn't imagine supporting Key's dream. Key, as I thought, immediately became a vital member of our team. At the welcome party, he introduced himself, saying he was the son of a hospital chairman, but couldn't give up his dream, so he left. Everyone gave him a warm applause for his determination. I clapped along, but something still felt off. You don't go home, you live alone, right? I casually inquired about his personal life during the party. I've cut ties with my family. When I said I didn't want to become a doctor, they disowned me. I think my sister will have to marry someone taking over the hospital, Keith mumbled. I do feel a bit guilty about my sister watching him. I felt a burning anger rise within me. Must be tough for your sister, all because you decided to be selfish. She's taking all the heat because of you, isn't she? Even I thought it was a mean thing to say. At that moment, I couldn't control my emotions. I harshly lashed out at a man almost a decade younger than me. Keith flinched slightly but firmly said, I don't regret it. I know my dream might have come at someone else's expense, but I can't give up. The thought of giving up never even crossed my mind. That's the determination I bring here. Keith spoke of his determination. I wished I could blame him for distorting the future, Rochelle, and I could have had. Such pettiness made me ashamed of myself. Still, the unresolved feelings continued to smoulder within me. In esports, maintaining concentration amidst high tension is crucial, especially in the game Keith plays. This is essential. It's the same even in regular practice matches. There's constant competition within the team, no different from any other sport. Only the best among the team get to play in matches. Those who can't produce results get phased out. That's the world of professionals. Many push themselves too hard and get sick. It's our job to guide them so that doesn't happen. Keith has a touch of genius, but he never forgets to work hard. I deeply wanted to support him, but I felt ashamed of my inability to do so. Then the incident happened. It was Keith's official debut match, a big tournament with a large number of participating teams. It was a knockout format. Keith's team kept on winning. With the lights dimmed in the venue, a large monitor lit up. Players sat in front of computers engrossed in their game, surrounded by a large audience. They had to keep their composure during the match. If they let the pressure get to them, they'd lose. Holding my breath, I closely watched Keith's character across the screen. Then it seemed like Keith, seated in his chair, tilted his head slightly. The next moment, with a crashing sound, Keith fell from his chair to the ground. On the screen, the character controlled by Keith stood still as the opposing team attacked. Are you okay, Keith? I rushed over to find Keith gasping for breath on the floor. An ambulance was immediately called. When it arrived, I ended up riding with him. The paramedic told me we're heading to the Johnson General Hospital's emergency room. I was a bit surprised. It seems there is a mysterious connection between the Johnsons and me. I tried to avoid it, but it felt like I was drawing this fate closer. I felt uneasy when he was brought into the emergency room. I waited outside the treatment room. Suddenly, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching down the hallway. I didn't want to assume, but I couldn't help but feel tense. My suspicions were confirmed. It was Michelle, now grown into a mature woman. She walked toward me with a pale face. She must have been taught not to run in the hospital corridors since she was a child. A frustrated frown creased her forehead. You're from Keith's company, right? Where's Keith? How's Keith doing? She said, looking at the treatment room's door, completely unaware of my presence. She was looking at the door and didn't notice me at all. She was clearly worried about her younger brother and seemed too preoccupied to notice anything else. I felt bad for Kay, but my heart braced more for Michelle. He just went into the treatment room. I managed to answer, and Michelle's slender shoulders shuddered. Then With great force, she turned to me. Her white eyes looked as if they could overflow with tears, staring deep into mine. "Is it Rick?" Her voice trembled as she asked. I nodded confidently in response. "It's been a while. Who would have thought we'd meet like this?" Michelle looked like she was about to burst into tears any moment. I was frozen, not knowing what to do. The tension between us was broken by the nurse's invitation. "Please come in." Normally, only family would be allowed in. "Can I come in too?" "I'm really worried." When I asked, Michelle gave a small nod in agreement. Keith was lying in bed with an IV drip. He looked much better, which was a bit relieving. "Doctor, how's he doing? Is he going to be okay?" Michelle, clutching the hem of my jacket, looked up with concern. I spoke up on her behalf, addressing the doctor. The doctor said he's overworked, probably pushed himself too hard, lack of sleep, not eating right, gaming all night. I suppose the decision was to keep him overnight for observation. We both felt relieved that it wasn't more serious. The patient himself, Heath, was soundly asleep. "I'll go grab some things he'll need for the overnight stay." Thinking Michelle should stay by Keith's side, I made the offer. "Could you? Thank you so much." To reassure Michelle, I grinned and said, "Leave it to me." Seeing that Michelle's face softened a little, that's when it happened. Suddenly, the treatment room door was flung open. The loud bang startled everyone inside, including the nurses. Keith, always causing trouble, entering with a loud shout, was Dr. Johnson in a white coat. He was Michelle and Keith's father. He was, without a doubt, my archenemy. And overworking, after all the talk and leaving the house like that. Should have listened to me and become a doctor. He grabbed Keith's collar and started shaking him. The nurses rushed to intervene. This isn't how a doctor should behave towards a patient. A nurse trying to intervene, Dr. Johnson, raised his hand to strike Keith and shouted, "Wake up." Without thinking, I grabbed his arm. "Stay out of it. This is a family matter." The annoyed doctor started yelling at me. I had no intention of letting go. With all due respect, that doesn't look like a family matter to me. Keith is one of our best. I'd appreciate it if you refrain from violence. Hearing that, Dr. Johnson looked at me immediately. His eyes widened, and his mouth twisted in shock. It seemed that he finally recognized who I was. "You dare to deceive my daughter, and now my precious son too, you uneducated piece of trash." The doctor's words ignited memories of my past anger. But I'm not the same person I was back then. I won't be shaken by such remarks. As the doctor and I locked eyes, Keith woke up. "Wait, Dad, sis." I wasn't in the middle of a game, struggling to grasp the situation. Keith's confusion was evident. I gently embraced him, explaining that he had collapsed and was brought to the hospital. "Keith, get back home now. I can still get you into a decent medical school. You wouldn't go wrong if you just listened to me." The doctor's harsh rebuke made Keith bite his lip. Always being dictated and controlled like this, that's probably why he ran away, I thought. Keith's an adult now. He makes his own decisions. Your children have grown beyond your reach. I positioned myself between Keith and the doctor, shielding both Michelle and Keith. The doctor's face, filled with anger, grabbed at my collar. "You seem rather bold now. You can't hide that you quickly bailed out on my daughter with that payoff money," Michelle gasped and said from behind me. "That money was returned to you ages ago." I replied with a provocative smirk. The doctor shouted, "You're lying." "Dad, aren't you familiar with Rick's company? They've been generously donating every year." Keith's voice reflected his growing impatience. "What? What are you talking about? Donations every year. You can't be serious. I brushed off the doctor's hand, presenting my business card once again. Recognizing the company name, the doctor's confidence wavered. I donated that money immediately. Why would I keep it? I always intended to come back for Michelle one day. I spilled out the promise I'd held deep in my heart. The promise that, always suppressing my feelings, deceiving even myself, but I can't do that anymore. My life has always been intertwined with Michelle's. Today, our unexpected reunion made those feelings come flooding back. I've been making donations to Johnson General Hospital under my company name, initially just to repay that payoff money. The continuous donations were because I couldn't let go of my connection with Michelle. Maybe I was testing my own resolve. For a private clinic, donations are a lifeline. Staring intently at my card, the doctor suddenly changed his demeanour. If only you'd said so, my apologies for the misunderstanding. We're always grateful for your support. Please keep it coming. His demeanour had shifted completely. He seemed nonchalant, but was oddly ingratiating. He's probably afraid I'd get upset and stop the donations. Well, I'll leave the rest to you. With that, he made a hasty exit, leaving us all dumbfounded. The rest of us were just left in shock. Both the attending physician and the nurses had surprised looks on their faces due to the sudden change in the doctor's behaviour. Well then, Keith, you will be admitted for the night. Remember, managing one's health is part of a professional's job. Be more cautious from now on. I'm sorry. I will be more careful, Rick. Thank you so much for standing up to my father so firmly. I was truly moved, thank you, Heath exclaimed with joy. I felt somewhat embarrassed. Receiving praise head-on is something I never really got used to. Michelle chuckled as she watched my reaction. Listen, Michelle, it's super late, and you might be fed up waiting, but if you're still single, I mustered up the courage to tell her that. Before I could finish, Michelle interrupted. I am single. I hadn't gotten married. I couldn't forget about you after you suddenly disappeared. The earnest look in her eyes left me speechless. After I had vanished, Michelle had confronted my father. Mother had heard what had transpired, what my father had done, and felt devastated. But she laughed, saying she never thought she wouldn't see me again. I always felt that our paths would cross again. I knew it in my heart, Michelle said. She had been looking forward to that day. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes thinking about her holding on to that tiny glimmer of hope every day after our separation made my heart ache. I'll bring a much nicer ring next time. As I said this, scratching my head, Michelle shook hers. I like that ring. You still have it, right? Feeling like she saw right through me, I scratched my head and responded, You got me. Of course, I still have it. The ring that was returned to me as if to sever our ties. I want that ring on my finger again. I nodded firmly in response to Michelle's words. At that moment, the entire treatment room erupted into applause. The doctor, nurses, and Keith all clapped their hands, saying, Good for you, as a gesture of celebration. Suddenly, I snapped back to reality. Michelle and I weren't alone. Feeling embarrassed, I hastily left the treatment room. A few days later, Michelle and I both went to meet the doctor. At first, the doctor refused to see us, but Michelle's tears eventually won him over. All right, I'll approve the marriage, but on one condition. The head doctor's condition was to forget about the old words, he said, which was amusing. It's probably about that comment he made about me being an uneducated trash, I quickly replied. Of course, I wanted to register our marriage right away, but due to work, it kept getting postponed. The one who ran out of patience was Michelle. and unusually she puffed up her cheeks, raising her voice in protest at me. She hardly ever gets angry. She hesitated a bit, and then complained in a soft voice, "Please don't keep me waiting any longer." Seeing Michelle blushing and speaking shyly, I realized how long I'd kept her waiting. "I'll do it right away." I stood up and left my work. I grabbed her hand and rushed to the county clerk's evening counter. Michelle said, "Wait," but I had no intention of waiting any longer. Our pace quickened, and by the time the county building was in sight, we were both running, our hands tightly holding onto each other. I swore in my heart I would never let go of this hand for the rest of my life.
I'm Amelia, and I've been surrounded with responsibilities since I can remember. With my 2 younger brothers running about and my newborn sister joining us when I was 10, our small house was always a hive of activity. "Could you help change Sarah's diaper, Amelia, honey?" With a voice worn out from working double shifts, Mom would call out. I would quickly drop what I was doing to assist. Everyone, with the exception of Sarah, contributed. It was our usual. She was different as soon as she got there. Dad would dismiss any worries about her conduct by saying, "She's just a baby, let her be." I saw my parents working themselves to the bone to support us all. Mom cleaning homes, Dad at the building site. To keep food on the table and hopes alive in our hearts, they exerted every effort. Being the middle children, my brothers Mike and David were sometimes overlooked in the mix between Sarah's privileges and my obligations. Whenever Sarah threw a fit and got her way again, we exchanged knowing glances across the dinner table. In an effort to escape the pattern of barely making ends meet, I began working as soon as I graduated from high school. The neighborhood diner wasn't very glitzy, but it was a beginning. I hid my college money jar in my closet and put every dime I made into it. Late at night, I would count it, hoping to have enough to enroll in community college courses. My managers were aware of my commitment within a year. After I transitioned from waitressing to bookkeeping, my aspirations of attending college became less unrealistic. Even I was shocked by how determined I was to balance my education and job while attending evening sessions. The fatigue was genuine. On some evenings, I would nod off while reading my textbooks, just to wake up early for another shift. My desire to achieve was further strengthened by seeing Sarah sleep till noon, skip school whenever she wanted, and get away with it. One night, as I was studying in the kitchen at midnight, Dad said, "You're going to burn yourself out." I grinned as I glanced up from my accounting assignment. "Maybe, Dad, but I'm heading somewhere. I swear to you." My college degree gave me access to opportunities I never would have imagined. I was employed by First National Bank as a junior analyst, and I approached my work with the same zeal that helped me succeed in school. My boss drew me aside after a few months. She said, "Amelia, I've never seen someone pick things up so quickly. You'll get far here if you keep up this pace." She was not mistaken. I was good with statistics, but I was much better with people. I handled workplace politics with ease, while others grumbled about them. Perhaps I had learned something valuable after all those years of handling family relationships. My brothers, David and Mike, had left home and begun their own lives in the interim. However, Sarah, she was still at home, doing her usual life without any consequences. When Mom called, she would give me updates that I didn't want to hear. She would sigh and remark, "Sarah was out until 3 o'clock again." You know how she is, but I'm worried. Yes, I was aware. I was also aware of the general lack of focus, the parade of boyfriends, and the poor grades. However, it was no longer my issue. Now I had my own place, my own life, and my own objectives. Then came the call that made all the difference. One morning, Mom said, "Sarah is pregnant." The father says he doesn't want anything to do with it and is now in Arizona. I tightened my hold on my phone. Of course, we'll assist her in raising the child. What other options do we have? They would, of course. Even though Sarah was 18 and expecting her own kid, she was still their darling baby. I didn't say anything since I knew what would happen next. Won't you assist as well, Amelia? Visit us on the weekends. You're quite skilled with kids. At that point, I began to come up with a very impressive list of reasons to avoid spending my valuable spare time caring for yet another child, including pressing job tasks, professional development classes, and client meetings. During one very unpleasant phone discussion, Mom exclaimed, "I don't understand you anymore. You were so helpful once." I corrected her, saying I used to be a child, forced to be helpful. Now that I'm an adult, I have my own life. But Mom, family is reciprocal. Or have you overlooked the monthly payment I send? That typically silences them, at least for a while. Sarah's prenatal treatment, baby supplies, and continuing expenditures were all covered by the sizable checks I sent. However, it was never sufficient to gain their acceptance. One day over coffee, my Aunt Lisa said to me, "You know, they're calling you heartless behind your back," claiming that you've changed and grown aloof. As I carefully swirled my coffee, I observed the patterns the cream was making in the dark beverage. Let them speak. In any case, they have never comprehended me. She continued, "They say you're ungrateful." I gave her a direct glance. Why are you not grateful? The honor of caring for their other kids. The chance to raise their grandchild now. Aunt Lisa, I've worked hard for all I own. Everything. That week, he was promoted to senior analyst. Both my pay and the checks I sent home rose once again. However, I maintained my boundaries. No last-minute favors, no emergency childcare, and no babysitting on the weekends. Call me callous, if they will. I had had enough of being the one in charge. Between client meetings and financial reports, romance wasn't exactly a priority. My dating app sat mostly unused on my phone, until that rainy Tuesday night when James's message popped up. Something about his profile seemed different. Maybe it was the genuine smile or the lack of shirtless gym selfies. "I noticed you work in finance," his message read. "I'm actually an investment advisor. Maybe we could bore each other with market talk over coffee." That coffee turned into dinner, which turned into weekends, which turned into 2 years of the kind of relationship I'd never thought I'd have time for. James was patient, understanding about my work schedule, and somehow managed to make me laugh, even after my most stressful days. You know, he said one evening as we walked through the park, "I never thought I'd find someone who understands both compound interest and my terrible jokes." Then came the proposal, nothing flashy, just us in my apartment after a home-cooked meal. "I can't imagine my life without you," he said, holding out the ring. "Marry me?" I said yes before he could even finish asking. Introducing him to my family was surprisingly smooth. Even Sarah behaved herself, which was a minor miracle. My parents were overjoyed. Finally, our workaholic daughter is settling down. Mom gushed after our first family dinner together. "And did you see how great he is with Tommy?" She meant Sarah's son, my nephew, who had indeed taken an instant liking to James. The wedding was beautiful, and married life started out perfectly. James fit into the family like he'd always been there. He'd play with Tommy for hours when we visited, teaching him to throw a ball, not this apartment. "We need savings, security." "But we're doing well," he'd counter. "Both have good jobs. What are we waiting for?" For the right time, I'd insist. One child, when we're ready. That's the plan we agreed on. He'd sigh and drop it, but I could feel his disappointment. During family gatherings, I'd catch him looking wistfully at Tommy. "Your sister manages just fine," he'd say sometimes, not quite keeping the edge out of his voice. "My sister lives with our parents and relies on their retirement savings," I'd reply. "That's not what I want for our child." The tension grew slowly, almost imperceptibly, like watching storm clouds gather on a sunny day. You know the rain is coming, but you tell yourself it's still far away. I was too focused on my next promotion, our house savings fund, the 5-year plan I'd carefully crafted. 5 years of marriage and spring cleaning still meant going through James's mess. He never could keep his side of the closet organized. That Saturday morning started like any other, me sorting through old receipts, forgotten gym clothes, and the usual clutter that accumulated on his shelves. That's when I found it, a phone I'd never seen before, tucked behind his winter sweaters. My stomach tightened as I picked it up. Not his work phone, not his personal phone. It wasn't even locked. My hand shook as I opened the messages. The first one I saw was from Sarah. "Miss you already. Can't wait until Saturday, when she's at work again." Hundreds of messages, pictures I wish I could unsee, conversations about me. Lol, she's so clueless, always at the office. All she cares about is her precious career. The timestamps went back months. My legs gave out, and I sat there on the closet floor, reading message after message, each one worse than the last. Then I saw it, the message that made my world stop spinning. "Baby's definitely yours. Doctor confirmed today, 12 weeks along." I don't remember driving to my parents' house. I don't remember much, except a phone clutched in my white-knuckled grip. Sarah was there, of course. Saturday morning cartoons with Tommy, one big happy family. "What the hell is this?" I threw the phone on the coffee table. Tommy looked up, startled, and Mom quickly sent him to play in his room. Sarah didn't even flinch. She picked up the phone, scrolled through it casually, like she was checking the weather. "Oh, well, I guess you know now." "That's all you have to say. You're sleeping with my husband." She shrugged, actually shrugged. "We're in love, Amelia. These things happen. And now with the baby coming, James and I want to get married. Once Amelia stops being difficult about it." Difficult? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I'm being difficult. You're having an affair with my husband." "Well, yes," Sarah said, like she was explaining something simple to a child. "You never wanted children anyway. You're too busy with your precious career. James needs a real family." I turned to my parents, waiting for them to say something, anything, to defend me, to condemn this betrayal. Instead, Mom sat down next to Sarah, patting her hand. "Amelia, try to be reasonable. Tommy needs a father figure, and James is so good with him. And now, with another baby coming, reasonable." My voice cracked. "My husband and sister are having an affair, and you want me to be reasonable." Dad cleared his throat. "Well, you never wanted children, honey. And James, he's always wanted to be a father. Maybe this is for the best. When was the last time you even cooked him dinner? Sarah would make a proper wife." I looked at them, my family, all sitting there, defending the indefensible. Sarah sat smug and pregnant with my husband's child. Mom was already planning the next wedding. Dad avoided my eyes, but was clearly on their side. "A proper wife," I repeated numbly. "Like your precious Sarah, who mooches off you and cheats with her sister's husband." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Amelia. Just go back to your big office and your important meetings. Leave the family stuff to people who actually care about it." I barely remember the drive home from my parents' house. The world seemed unreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of my own. When I walked through our front door, James was there in the living room, acting like it was just another normal Saturday. "Hey, honey," he moved to hug me. that familiar smile on his face. The smile I used to love. The smile that now made me sick to my stomach. I stepped back, holding up his second phone. Want to explain this. The change in his face was instant. First confusion, then recognition, then fear. Where did you find it? While cleaning. You really should find better hiding spots for your affair phones, James. Amelia, I can explain. Explain what? The messages, the photos, or maybe explain how you got my sister pregnant? He tried denial first, like they all do. It's not. I didn't. But he must have seen something in my face, because suddenly his whole demeanor changed. The mask dropped completely. Fine, yes, Sarah and I are together, he snapped. What did you expect? You're never home. All you care about is work, work, work. When was the last time we even had a real conversation about starting a family? Oh, so this is my fault. You cheated because I wanted financial security before having children. You never wanted children, not really. You always had some excuse. The house, the savings, the right time. Sarah actually wants a family. She understands what's important in life. I looked at this man, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and felt nothing but disgust. What's important in life is loyalty, honor, basic human decency. But I guess those things aren't important to you, or my precious sister. Don't act all high and mighty, he snarled. You're just angry because Sarah's giving me what you wouldn't. The divorce papers were filed the next day. I had documentation of the affair, so it went through quickly. My brothers, Mike and David, came to help me move out of the apartment. They were the only ones who stood by me. We always knew Sarah was spoiled, Mike said as we packed boxes. But this is a new low. David couldn't even say her name. They're dead to me, he declared. Both of them. Through my brothers, I heard the updates I never wanted, but couldn't help knowing. James and Sarah got married in a small ceremony. My parents were there, of course, beaming proudly. The baby was born, a girl. They moved into a small house in the suburbs. Tommy started calling James Dad. Mom keeps trying to get us to visit them. Mike told me during one of our monthly dinners. Says we need to be a family again. We are a family, David said, raising his glass. The three of us. That's enough. I nodded, grateful for my brother's loyalty in a world where loyalty seemed to mean nothing anymore. We were the only ones who understood that some betrayals can't be forgiven, some bridges can't be rebuilt, and some families are better off broken. 4 years can change everything. My new apartment overlooked the city skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, and enough space to finally display the art collection I'd always wanted. The Mercedes in my reserved parking spot gleamed under the garage lights. I'd made it exactly as I'd planned. My brothers visited often, bringing news and rumors. Sarah and James struggling to make ends meet, 3 moves in 2 years, each apartment smaller than the last. But I didn't care. Their life wasn't my concern anymore. Until that Tuesday evening when my phone lit up with a number I'd hoped never to see again. Amelia, James's voice, 4 years older, but still familiar enough to make my stomach clench. Please don't hang up. I should have. Instead, I listened. We need your help, he said, as if he had any right to ask me for anything. Sarah had an accident, broke her leg badly, compound fracture. She's had surgery, but she can't move around, can't take care of the kids. And she's pregnant. Again. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, wondering if this was some kind of cosmic joke. The kids need someone to pick them up from school, watch them until I get home from work. Tommy's getting too big to handle everything himself, and with the new baby coming, he paused. We thought maybe you could help." "You thought what?" My voice came out eerily calm. "They're your nephews, Amelia. Your family. Sarah can't even get to the bathroom by herself right now." "My family?" I repeated. "The sister who slept with my husband and the husband who cheated on me. That's my family." "Don't be like that," he snapped, his tone shifting from pleading to accusatory. "This isn't about us. It's about innocent children who need help. Or are you too selfish to care about them?" "Too selfish?" I almost laughed. "That's rich, coming from you." "We're struggling here." His voice rose. "Do you know how expensive kids are? I'm working overtime just to keep food on the table. We can't even afford a decent apartment anymore. Meanwhile, you're living it up in your luxury condo with your fancy car. So that's what this is about, money?" "Not all of us can focus only on our careers," he said bitterly. "Some of us have real responsibilities." "Must be nice," I said, voice icy. "Having the family you stole and no way to support them." I replied coldly, "Sounds like a real dream come true. The kids need parents who didn't build their relationship on betrayal. Goodbye, James." I hung up mid-protest and blocked his number before he could call back. My mother's number showing up on my phone was almost as unwelcome as James's had been. I answered anyway, some old habit I couldn't quite break. "Amelia." Mom's voice had that tone, the one she always used when she wanted something. "We need to talk about Sarah. She needs help." "James called you, didn't he? About her leg?" I paced my living room, fighting the urge to hang up immediately. "Yes, he did, and I'll tell you what I told him. Not my problem." "How can you be so cold? She's your sister. She's struggling with 3 children, well, soon to be 3. The sister who slept with my husband. That sister." Mom sighed heavily. "That was years ago, Amelia. You need to move past it. We're family. Funny how family only matters when you need something from me." "We've helped her as much as we can." Mom's voice cracked a little, "but she keeps asking for money. For the kids, for the rent, for everything. We've gone through all our savings. Your father and I, we can't keep this up." I couldn't help but laugh. So the golden child is finally becoming too expensive to maintain. Don't be cruel. She's never learned to what? Work? Support herself? Take responsibility for her actions? Gee, I wonder why that is. She just keeps having babies, Mom said, frustration finally breaking through. She won't look for a job, says she's too busy with the children. But she's always asking for money, always needing something. Sounds like exactly the person you raised her to be, I said coldly. The princess who never had to face consequences. You have no right to speak to me like that. Mom's voice rose. I am your mother. And whose fault is it that Sarah turned out this way? Who taught her that she never had to work for anything? That someone would always bail her out. We did our best. No, you did your easiest. And now you're calling me because the monster you created is too expensive to feed. You have a duty to help your family. Mom was almost shouting now. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me. I cut in. You mean like supporting my sister when she had an affair with my husband? Or like calling me selfish for wanting financial security before having children? I don't owe you anything. I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking with 4 years of pent-up rage. The expensive view from my apartment windows suddenly seemed like the best revenge, my life, built exactly as I'd planned it, without their help or approval. Mike called me one evening while I was reviewing quarterly reports. You'll never guess who tried calling me today. Sarah. I already knew the desperation tour was making its rounds. Bingo. Wanted me to help with the kids, Maybe loan them some money until they get back on their feet. He snorted, as if they were ever on their feet to begin with. What did you tell her? Same thing David told her yesterday, that some betrayals can't be undone. That what she did to you wasn't just cheating, it was destroying a family. She started crying, saying we were being cruel, that family should help family. He paused. I reminded her she didn't seem too concerned about family when she was sleeping with your husband. I leaned back in my office chair, looking out at the city lights. How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. Started screaming about how we're all against her, how nobody understands how hard her life is. He chuckled darkly. Guess karma finally caught up with her. 2 weeks later, David brought the news I'd been expecting. They moved in with Mom and Dad. All of them, Sarah, James, the kids, and the baby on the way. Dad's converting his workshop into another bedroom. How are Mom and Dad handling it? Remember how peaceful retirement was supposed to be? Well, now they're full-time babysitters and ATMs. Mom's watching the kids while Sarah recovers, which apparently means scrolling through her phone all day. Dad's dipping into his pension to cover their expenses. I shook my head. They made their choice. Mom came by my place yesterday, David continued. Wanted to know if I'd talk to you about helping out. Said they're overwhelmed. I bet they are. The next day, Mom showed up at my door unannounced. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Before I could even say anything, she said, please. Just pay attention. No, I interrupted her. You pay attention. It was all your choice. You made the terrible decision to pamper Sarah. When she deceived me, you decided to stand by her side. You decided to let them live there. Mom, these are your options. Cohabitate with them, and I'll contact the cops if you come to my door once more. Are we clear? I interrupted her once more as she began to speak. Remember that this was your decision the next time you feel overburdened. Instead of choosing the one who always put out effort and acted morally, you went with the one who betrayed her sister. Live with it now. I blocked her phone, the last family number I had left to ban after my brother's, and put an end to her objections. Marcus, the man I had been dating for a few months, joined me for dinner that evening. He was aware of my narrative, the betrayal, and the fallout. He simply listened and understood. He had never hurried or pushed. He leaned across the table and held my hand after I updated him on the most recent family happenings. He remarked quietly, family isn't always who you're born to. It depends on who you choose sometimes. I returned his grip while reflecting on my brother's support, Marcus's understanding, and the life I had created for myself. Ultimately, Sarah had just assisted me in determining which aspects of my family were valuable. She had not taken it. I informed him that my brothers will be visiting this weekend. Want to come along with us? His grin was sufficient, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely content with who I was and where I was going. I no longer cared about the drama unfolding at my parents' place. I had my own happiness to preserve, my own family to raise, and my own life to enjoy.
Do you believe that someone like you who only has a high school education may get employment elsewhere? With a downcast expression, Miss Anderson spoke. Carly, I told you the truth about that. In actuality, I'm going to take over as head manager at your place of employment. How come? What are you trying to say? Miss Anderson was taken aback, but this was a fact. My childhood experiences are the reason I want to work in a retail store. My grandfather was a department store manager, so he was extremely close to me and had a big influence on me. Cody Green is my name. I'm a working professional who is 24 years old. I am, incidentally, single and do not currently have a girlfriend. I'm employed for a major department store. I've been employed there for 6 years, having started immediately out of high school. Some people assume that working in a department store is an easy job, but that isn't the case. In actuality, department store work involves a wide range of skills. This is true for the majority of service sectors, but handling challenging clients and irrational complaints is a daily occurrence. Problems are more likely to occur when there are more visitors. It's crucial to keep honing your conversational and product expertise in order to consistently deliver outstanding customer support. It is our responsibility to continue learning in order to provide our clients with a positive buying experience. Selling goods and calling it a day is not enough. The most important things for department store employees to remember are to always look nice, act elegantly, and be the right kind of person for the store. Although working in a retail store may seem glamorous, it's actually very difficult. Even if there were moments when I wanted to give up, I would never forget about my late grandfather. Before he went away when I started primary school, my grandfather owned and operated a department shop in our town that he inherited from his father. My grandfather owned a small department shop, possibly because it was a family enterprise. Still, it was always busy and well-liked by the locals because of his years of experience. The department store was always filled with customers, creating the atmosphere of a lively festival with its flashy displays. My heart would usually skip a beat when I saw the happy shoppers. I cherished the unique ambience of the shop, which was embellished with touches from my grandfather. I requested to go to the department shop whenever I had the opportunity. My grandfather was quite young at heart, even though he was very old. He always wore a neat suit and did his work with efficiency. He was the owner, but he never gave an air of haughtiness. Every time, he walked to the sales floor in humility and took the lead on difficult assignments. Due to his commitment, he was well trusted by his coworkers. My grandfather's personality was a major factor in the department store's happy atmosphere. Normally, everything was quiet, then one day something happened. A patron approached and reported seeing a poorly clothed woman and child in the food court. My grandfather and I went straight to the first floor food court. There was a table with free drinks in front of a mother and child wearing tattered clothes. The two were a small boy, who was approximately my age at the time, and a mother who appeared to be in her 30s. It was obvious, even at a distance, how tired they both were. There were several patrons around who were slightly shaken and uncomfortable. The mother, who was blushing with shame and looking down, must have realized this as well. My grandfather heard one of the women speak to him. "Would you please ask them to leave?" My grandfather heard this and walked gently over to the two. The mother and youngster appeared terrified as he approached, most likely fearing they would be chastised for not placing an order for food. However, my grandfather comforted them by saying, "I'm so sorry for the wait," in a soft voice. "I take it you're here for the interview. This is the direction of the interview room. Kindly go with me." What? When my grandfather said this, the mother's eyes widened in shock. Granted, it was her first meeting, and no official interview was planned, but he took swift action to make sure the two of them would not draw any further interest from obliging bystanders. "Right this way," he said as he led them with an air of professionalism to the reception area. He provided the mother and child drinks and a selection of goodies as soon as they entered the reception area. When I asked the mother, I found out that her name was Karen, and that her son, Taylor, looked about my age. With his eyes brightening at the sight of the munchies, Taylor appeared to be rather hungry. Karen cried as she said, "I'm so sorry for coming to the department store looking like this," to my grandfather. "We've irritated and startled other customers." Karen appeared disheveled, yet her mannerisms and speech were surprisingly sophisticated. My granddad and I were shocked as well. After saying thank you, Taylor also started to devour the snacks neatly. Both the father and the youngster appeared to be well-mannered and socially adept. It's not at all troublesome, but if you don't mind telling, Are you facing any difficulties right now? Well, I was able to flee with my child from my abusive spouse. Daddy was a very frightening person. Even at his young age, I felt empathetic as I stated to Taylor, "That sounds tough." We first avoided sleeping outside by booking hotels, but we eventually ran out of money, which is why we ended ourselves at the food court. I apologize sincerely. You don't have to apologize all that much. People just like you have visited our department store previously. I really have a few social services leaflets. Do you want further details? My granddad saw this and gave her a pamphlet. My granddad was praised several times by Karen. I'm grateful. I had no idea that women who have experienced domestic abuse may find refuge. I believe we'll ask them for assistance initially. Thank you so much for coming, my grandfather remarked to Karen as she was ready to depart with Taylor. You passed the test, Karen, by the way. What? What topic are you discussing? Grinning, my grandfather clarified, I'm referring to a job interview. I would like to formally hire you as a full-time employee here, if that is okay with you. Me? A full-time worker? Indeed. I've seen from our conversation that you have a strong set of interpersonal skills. In addition, this department store offers daycare for your kids as well as uniforms. We would be thrilled to collaborate with you. Karen's eyes welled up with tears at my grandfather's remarks. Her voice was heavy with emotion as she continued to say thank you. 20 years later, that particular scene is still quite clear in my memory. I wanted to be a man of justice and morality, just like my grandfather. Karen started working at the department shop full-time after that day. When we originally met, she appeared exhausted, but after donning the store uniform and applying makeup, she looked completely different. Karen was a breathtakingly gorgeous woman. She adapted to her new role with ease thanks to her sophisticated manner. Her friendly customer service was highly appreciated by her clients. Karen's life started to normalize when she was employed because of her steady pay. I used to play with Taylor in the daycare where he spent his time. Hi, Taylor. I gave him my clothes and apologized, saying, "It's just hand-me-downs, but I'm giving you some clothes." I wanted to assist Taylor's family because I heard they were still having financial difficulties. It was my mother's suggestion. In actuality, there were brand new garments among the hand-me-downs. However, I didn't tell Taylor or his family about it. Many thanks, my mother exclaimed. We don't have many clothes, so this helps a lot. Taylor grinned as he gave me his thanks. Taylor's mother, Karen, was equally stunning as him. Both had well-defined features and a good build. Taylor and I had a great day together, and I hope we could spend that kind of time every day. Sadly, my everyday schedule came to an end the moment I entered elementary school. My grandfather passed away 3 days after my elementary school admission ceremony. The department store as a whole was taken aback by the abrupt departure. My dad took over the department shop at first, but then something new started to happen. Nearby, a national chain store opened, and shoppers began to pour into it. Our store was going through a management change at the time, which made the timing problematic and most likely contributed to the issue. Ultimately, the department store that was having trouble was combined with the big mall. It's all my fault for not being good enough. My father expressed his profound sadness about the entire ordeal, saying, I've really let everyone down. However, sometimes it's just misfortune. My mother and the other workers did not hold my father exclusively responsible for everything. Though it's unfortunate that my grandfather and I no longer have those memories, there are instances when accepting fate is the only option. I tried to remind myself of that all the time in an attempt to get over the death of Karen and Taylor. Karen was able to secure a full-time position at a department store in a nearby state, owing to my father's network. In her farewell remarks, Karen remarked, I can't thank you enough for all the help and for introducing me to my new job. There is absolutely no issue. You've made a significant impact on the department store. I hope your new endeavor succeeds." I was hoping to say farewell to Taylor too, but he was not present. Taylor, who was only 7 years old at the time, didn't seem to be able to take it. It appeared that the loss of the department store, which brought back happy memories of his daycare days, had affected him. I pondered Taylor's current state of health. I kept thinking about him even throughout high school. My parents both work at different department stores at the moment. Our financial status hasn't been as pleasant as it was during my grandfather's prosperous business days. However, our family is close-knit, and we're happy with our circumstances. In paradise, I have no doubt that my grandfather would be most pleased to see us content. I am now more motivated than ever to attend school because I was nominated as the vice president of the student council in my junior year of high school. Mike, a friend of mine, remarked, "Hi, Cody. I take it that you collaborate with Miss Anderson in the student council. Could you please present her to me?" I felt uneasy when I heard the surname Anderson. I am unable to present you to President Anderson in any way. Although she may have a charming appearance, she is incredibly independent in our student council. The president was a female student named Miss Anderson. Her father is a lawyer, apparently, so she's kind of an ace. Miss Anderson always wears elegant clothing because our school permits informal attire. Her attractiveness allows her to look good in any kind of clothing. Cody, just own up to it. Aren't you just attempting to get close to Miss Anderson? Not at all. Miss Anderson doesn't seem to like me at all, not even when I try. Yes, Miss Anderson has been really strict with me. I made an attempt to start a discussion one day while we were by ourselves in the council chamber. I'm not sure what to say because I don't often chat to girls. Well, I understand now. Don't you think you have a fantastic sense of style? What? The other girls think you're great, and you're always so trendy. Are you saying I try too hard? No, I didn't mean it like that. Miss Anderson gave me a fierce gaze, anger clearly visible on her lovely face. Whatever I choose to wear, it's none of your business. Miss Anderson quickly turned aside after saying that and returned to her job. When you try to compliment someone and it is misinterpreted in that way, it can be difficult. I was awkward and didn't know how to react, so I kept working silently. Sometimes she would just look at me without saying anything, and when I questioned, "Is something wrong?" she would answer, "Nothing at all," and turn away. She interrupted me to say, "Stop talking and focus on your work," as soon as she noticed me interacting with other girls. Mike responded, "Well, Miss Anderson was chosen as the student council president, and she's pretty popular among both boys and girls," after I told him the Miss Anderson anecdote. She's not an awful person, in my opinion. It is accurate. Miss Anderson was actually described as a really sweet girl by several of her classmates. She consistently received great grades and did a fantastic job in her role on the student council. Because of her attractiveness, she was the most popular student at the school. While we were on the student council together for a year, Miss Anderson and I never seemed to get along. I wished I could have gotten closer to her. In high school, I told my teacher that I wanted to work at a department store when we were talking about our future plans. The teacher recommended college based on my grades, but I remained true to my choice because of budgetary limitations. I was the only one in my class who had completed high school and started working because my high school was a preparatory school. Yes, even Miss Anderson, I had this uneasy sense that I wouldn't see my high school friends again after today. On graduation day, let's take a group picture. Miss Anderson was surrounded by a large group of females, and they all snapped a group photo to remember the occasion. I had never seen Miss Anderson laugh so freely and merrily before. She generally seemed restrained. My heart raced for some unknown cause. I may have had affections for Miss Anderson, despite my repeated claims that I felt uneasy in her presence. Though I'm not saying I wanted to date her, I do wish our chats could have been more fruitful. I walked out of the school building after thinking that. I received an invitation to a reunion 6 years after I graduated, right as my nostalgic yet bittersweet recollections of my childhood were starting to fade. Our entire grade was invited to a reunion at a posh hotel. I was shocked to learn that Miss Anderson was one of the organizers when I looked at the invitation. Her last name hasn't changed, and it appears she's still unmarried, which surprised me because I assumed she would have gotten married by now given her beauty and wealthy upbringing. Even though I have no intention of courting Miss Anderson, I made the decision to go to the reunion. The day of the reunion then arrived. There were many more people than I had anticipated when we made our way to the hotel. One of the organizers handed me a printout with the names of all the attendees when I got there. We could read about everyone's recent lives in the parts dedicated to current status, a note to your high school self, and present career. Actually, the invitation included this questionnaire. I have heard that Miss Anderson came up with the concept to conduct this poll and provide these sheets on the designated day. Her creativity struck me as impressive. Naturally, Miss Anderson was the center of attention today as she chatted enthusiastically with many of our pupils. Elegantly clothed, she looked even more lovely than she did before. "You work at that prestigious department store. That's amazing." When inquired about her current employment, she smiled and said, "Oh, it's not a big deal." However, it's actually very difficult to land a permanent job at that prestigious department shop. Considering its lengthy history, one must possess respectable academic status and effective communication abilities. Appearance and behavior appropriate for the store's atmosphere are also crucial. Miss Anderson was presumably considered a good fit for the store and extended an offer of employment because she attended a prestigious university and had impeccable manners and looks. I kept stealing glances at Miss Anderson without her knowing as I enjoyed catching up with former classmates. Even though we both served on the student council, I was hesitant to talk to her. I reasoned that she most likely didn't want to socialize with me. But Miss Anderson surprised me by coming over. She said, "Cody, long time no see," with a straight expression, which surprised me. On the questionnaire, you omitted the item about your present occupation. Are you not working right now? That was not the topic I had anticipated, so I apologized a little awkwardly. Since I'll shortly be transferring employment, I purposefully kept it blank. "Do you think you can find another job with just a high school diploma?" Miss Anderson said something a little patronizing. "Actually, I'm about to become a manager at your department store," I said in a cool, collected manner. "How come?" "What do you mean?" she questioned, startled. That was the indisputable reality. I was going to be promoted from my current position to manager at the same fancy store where Miss Anderson works. The proprietor of the store extended an employment offer to me because of my good work at my current job and my ability to use my grandfather's contacts. "You mean you're going to be my boss?" she questioned in disbelief. "Yes, that is the main idea." "You're not serious." I was alert, expecting her to say anything, but she looked shocked and remained silent for the remainder of the get-together. Her demeanor perplexed me, but eventually I was hired on as a manager at the reputable department store and began working there. Although managing others was challenging at times, it was also more rewarding, and I had the good fortune to have dependable and capable staff members. Although I liked working in a posh setting, Miss Anderson was always scary and appeared far away from me. "Miss Anderson, I don't understand this part," stated Cody. Lily, a recent hire who is a woman, was interacting with me. She was a very attractive and elegant woman, and her charm was distinct from Miss Anderson's. Lily also had a kind demeanor, and many of the male staff members looked up to her. She seemed like a lovely, kind woman, but I couldn't help but feel a lack of romantic sentiments for her. "Oh, this is how you can do it." Nevertheless, I appreciated the lively exchange of messages. I thought that effective cooperation would improve the company's atmosphere even further. But for some reason, Miss Anderson would always interrupt me when I was speaking with Lily. "Hey Lily, ask me or others if you don't understand something." Miss Anderson, "Whoa, manager, what's up with the yikes?" You need to get on with more crucial tasks. Actually, I remember experiencing something similar in high school. While I worked for the student council, Miss Anderson would tell me to work if I spoke to another female. I wonder whether she thinks I'm letting myself go. Miss Anderson, well, I think I need to understand what parts the new employees find difficult to understand as a manager, I said, gently calming her down. So you won't have to worry about me too much if I ask another employee if I'm extremely busy. She didn't seem to like it, even though I was trying to say it gently. You're acting so nice toward the female workers. After stating, that's sexual harassment, she walked away. What's wrong with her mindset? I had the same emotions as Lily. I questioned why Miss Anderson, a normally sober woman, gets worked up over me. I questioned whether I would always be spending my time in this manner without ever being able to comprehend her, much like I did in high school. Although I was concerned about Miss Anderson, I was once invited to a drinking party at work. The first party had a somber ambience, but attendees at the second and third events were split up according to departments. I was having a third party with department members before I knew it. Cody, please have another sip. Oh, I'm okay. Miss Anderson was the only one who drank silently by herself and didn't talk to anyone, although Lily and nearly everyone else were heavily intoxicated. I couldn't enjoy drinking as much as I wanted to because I was worried about her as a boss. Why am I worrying so much about her, I wonder? Lily, let's spend the evening together. You're a little too inebriated. Lily came over to me with more aggression than she usually shown, thanks to the booze. Miss Anderson started weeping out of the blue while I was pondering how to handle it. So be. Stupid. Is Miss Anderson doing okay? What's that? Because they were intoxicated, none of the other members, including Lily, seemed to realize that Miss Anderson was crying. I wanted to leave her there subtly so no one would know. Miss Anderson, it appears that you are not feeling well, I informed her. You can ride with me to the station. At that moment, I left the party. Since everyone was already inebriated, no one seemed to notice or care that the two of us had vanished. Miss Anderson and I went to a local park first. I reasoned that she might get quieter for a little while if we sat on a bench there. I gave her the bottle of water I had purchased, and after she took a sip, she seemed a little more at ease. Miss Anderson, what is the issue? Has anything occurred? She stared at me, tears welling up in her eyes as I asked this. It made me very upset to think that Lily might take you away from me, Cody. How come? My uncertainty further increased when I realized that Miss Anderson had called me Cody, a surprising revelation that momentarily left my thoughts blank. Miss Anderson, are you intoxicated? This isn't how I would communicate my feelings if I wasn't intoxicated. Ah, the good old days, when we just played together innocuously. I didn't know what she was discussing. You refer to your high school days. No, that was in preschool, when you and I were much younger. Oh, then it dawned on me. It dawned on me that Miss Anderson was actually Taylor. She was Taylor, but I had always called her by her last name. However, I recalled having fun with a boy. But your last name was different. Wait. Furthermore, Taylor wasn't a boy's name at the time. Since I wore hand-me-down clothes and had a short hairstyle, people assumed I was a male at the time. Particularly after Cody handed me his old guy clothes. I wanted to tell everyone that I was a girl, but it got tougher. In addition, my mom remarried, changing my last name. It was unbelievable to me that Taylor was Miss Anderson, the popular girl in school. I was momentarily stunned. Miss Anderson does, in retrospect, look a lot like Taylor's mother. It was astonishing to realize that Taylor had become such a lovely and mature woman as she grew older. She went on, tears streaming down her cheeks. Remember, I never said goodbye to you when we were little. As an adult, I can better appreciate how devastated I was when our beloved department store closed. I felt a little resentful of your parents and you. Miss Anderson, I apologize for how coldly I treated you in high school, but I know it was unavoidable. I wanted to identify myself as Taylor and step ahead, but I didn't want you to see my frail side from that time. I got dressed and concentrated on how I looked. We're back to working together, but I still can't be completely honest about how I feel. It's pitiful, which is why I lost it. I sincerely apologize. Taylor. I called her that for the first time in a very long time. She seems momentarily taken aback. I too missed my grandfather's department store, but our friendship will last a lifetime and the memories will never fade. There is always room for improvement between us. Nothing has changed. Cody Taylor grabbed me and called my name. I became aware of how much she had suffered and fought because of her fears as I gave her a hug. I wanted to appreciate her scars and everything. She was Taylor, so I suppose that's why I was drawn to her. We began dating and had a wonderful working connection from that day on. She smiled and continued, I want to become a wonderful department store manager, just like your grandpa. She was so radiant. We must have reconnected because of my grandpa's generosity.